Before I forget, I already mentioned this in the email today, I think. Next week, we meet on Tuesday, not Monday. Next week is President's Day. You have Tuesday classes. The Tuesday classes are all off, but Monday classes meet on Tuesday. So we'll be here next Tuesday at the usual time and place. Before we launch, I'm going to only briefly cover the Webster readings. The article is, well, I actually think it's interesting, but it's not essential to anything. And then we'll cover part 2 of Peopleware, and then you guys will have the rest of the period for whatever.
You're being too hard on yourself. I thought it was very informative.
Well, it's part of the. Well, I'll get into that when I get into it. Mostly, I'm interested in, is the class meeting your expectations, or are there things that you want to be sure they get covered between now and the end of the semester that you'd like more information on? Anything? No, I think you. Are you liking the class?
Yes.
Okay, that's sort of it. Okay, I just want to make sure you're liking the class. Again, my goal is to prepare you for the real world, which is something a lot of CS departments and classes don't do that well. So, and I'll try not to. I try to mentally keep track of what stories I've told you and haven't told you, so I don't repeat myself too often. Anyway, okay. Number 3, Ruby is a long-time colleague and friend. I first met her about 20 years. Actually, I met her about 20 years ago. I was talking at a conference about a book I'd written called The Art of Where. And she came, which was literally a reinterpretation of Sun Tzu, maxim by maxim, applying it to developing marketing technology. Someday I'll do an updated version. But I was doing a session at a software development conference on the book. And one of the big themes is the need for leadership in information technology. And she enjoyed the talk. She came up and talked to me. I was working for Object Systems Group at the time. And she ended up retaining me through OSG to come in and mentor some of her developers. She was at a global logistics firm about IT project management, software architecture, and so on. And we've stayed in touch ever since. And this was an idea she'd kicked around for a while. There is a very real problem, and DeMarco and Lister talk about this as well. In fact, I think they talked about in part 1 that a lot of organizational IT upper management use it as a manufacturing process. You have workers on an assembly line, and you hand out tasks, and you do things. Software is not like that at all. I mean, that's again, getting back to our work. There's a tremendous amount of investigation and creativity in software development. Management doesn't like that because it makes it hard to predict. You know, you can have that aha moment. Oh, I know how to do this. And suddenly all sorts of things fall into place. Or you have problems that you just sort of beat your head against a, cinder block wall for weeks, trying to figure out how to make this happen. And so the point of this article was just to say, here's a way to think differently. Think about software development teams the same way you think about sports teams. Recruit for talent, recruit for proven ability, recruit for ability to fit within a team, recognize the different roles and positions. Ruby and I are both fans of football, so we pretty much picked that. I'm sure you can come up with other sports analogies. But the problem is IT recruiting, particularly coming through HR. HR departments are notoriously bad at recruiting. How many of you have had situations where you've gone in for interviews and you feel like the HR department doesn't really understand what your talents and backgrounds are, what you're bringing to bear. Yeah, I see some. Yeah, go ahead, raise your hand. Be brave. Yeah. This sadly is pretty common. You know, and it's the classic. I already mentioned this once, but I'll mention it again. The classic joke was some company back in the late 90s advertising for programmers with 5 years job experience when Java had only been out for like 3 years.
That happens nowadays with a lot of JavaScript libraries.
Yeah. It does happen. It's kind of like, well, we want this, and so we'll put this checkbox item, and you have to have this much. By the way, let me also share with you the idea is whatever they have for checkbox items or whatever they say in the ad, if you're interested in a job, apply anyway. One of the things you'll find is that groups are often, they'll list requirements and no one will apply because in some cases it's literally impossible because you have requirements that no one meets. Or people get scared away, and quite often if you go in and simply interview, they'll say, oh yeah, we like you. My sister, who's an outstanding software architect and engineer, retired now, but faced this back about, what was it, 94. She was out interviewing, and she lives in San Diego, and she saw jobs that said, you know, must have bachelor's degree in computer science. She has a master's degree in education. She basically changed programming after several years of teaching and turned out to be a natural at it. And she saw some jobs she really liked, but she didn't meet the requirements, but she said, oh, I'm going to go ahead and interview anyway. And got several job offers, and actually got a great job with SAIC doing some sophisticated automated analysis of Petri dish cultures with under software control. So, if you see a job you like or a company you like, apply anyway. They screen you out, they're lost. But they might say yes, yeah.
I know that most companies don't do this, but I have heard of some shifty schemes of making purposefully impossible or way purposefully underpaid positions for the purpose of qualifying for an H-1B visa.
I don't know about that, but it wouldn't surprise me. Yes?
I do know about that.
Oh.
Because I was denied one. But they've actually increased that to this year they increased the minimum wage to 120,000 for computer engineers. So it's going to bring it at par with American engineers. So that's the reason why they're doing that, is so that they don't hire H-1B candidates at a lower wage, because someone from India would be like, yeah, $40,000 a year is great. Someone from UK is like, no thanks.
Yeah.
But yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Thanks. I hadn't heard about updates from it.
So what is sport team? Oh, is there a question? Okay. Sports teams don't hire, at least good ones don't hire. Simply based on, yeah. Simply, well, part is on who you can get, but professional sports teams don't hire based on, oh, well, you know, we want you to have been playing football for 5 years. And if you haven't been playing for 5 years, we're not going to hire you. They look for demonstrated talent, skill, background, reputation. Problem is, or the advantage you have in sports is that you have systems, whether it's, you know, baseball farm teams, whether it's college football, you have different feeder systems that allow the professional teams to say, oh, here's so-and-so that I've been watching this person since they were in some cases, you know, junior high. We're gonna recruit her or him. With IT, you don't have that level of visibility, generally speaking. So it becomes harder to apply that analogy, but if I'm building a team, when I built the Pages engineering team, it took me 1.5 years, basically to hire a total of 8 software engineers. I went through a tremendous number of resumes, a lot of phone interviews, and a fair number of face-to-face interviews. And there were still a few duds. As I mentioned, there was one person I hired right off the bat. One of first hires I had who was, I let him go after a month. And that was sort of a point at which I thought I have to rethink how I'm interviewing and hiring people, the basis in which I'm bringing them in. Avoid overpaying new hires and underpaying proven performers. It's very interesting. That line has been in the slide for a year now. This is exactly what my daughter went through at her company here, where she found out last fall that new hires were being paid $10K a year more than she was making, even though she'd been there for 2.5 years, because the job market here in Utah is so hot. And she said, what do I do? And I said, you go and you lay out your case to your manager and say, hey, you know, I love it here. This is a good job. Here's what I've done. Here's what I've accomplished. I'm aware that you're doing this. You know, how can we resolve this? She got a $14K raise out of it because they didn't want to lose her. Now that happened because this is right now in Utah a very hot job market. But that's a great. This last item is a great way to demoralize your proven performers. You want to take care of them first. You want to keep them there. Yeah.
That's actually the last point. I had a question comment. The company that I'm interning at now, when I talked to them at Stanford last fall, something that they said that impressed me was that, well, I asked what positions they were looking to fill, and they said basically we're looking for good people, and if you're good, we'll hire you. Would you say that's a good sign?
That's a good sign. I mean, talk, in one sense, talk is cheap, but yes, no, that's a very good sign. It's not like we want a warm body to fill the slot. We want to be, to get good people. Again, hiring at Pages, I wanted to find the best software engineers I could find, and we would figure out who would do what as we went along, and it actually worked quite well. Yeah.
I have 2 questions. How did you find out that she was being paid less, but then more to like your recruiting and interviewing? Do you agree or like doing like technical interviews in person with them? Like a lot of people will do that whole FizzBuzz example we did, or they'll want you to do some coding challenge in front of them, or I just want to know what your opinion on that is.
Okay, we'll get to that. First, how did she find out? I don't know. I think. It's liking that. Okay. Coaching. Now, one of the things we did when I was with OSG, we at OSG were, for the most part, we were very senior developers, architects, process people, and so on. And we would go into corporations and we wouldn't do the work. Well, we had lots of consultants we would bring in to do work, but for the most part, our purpose was to go in and mentor people, to work with them, to teach them architecture, to teach them process, to teach them good quality engineering, and so on. A lot of organizations don't do this. Again, I can't stress enough, one of the things that will buy you more loyalty as an organization from your engineers is to give them educational opportunities. Bring in specialists, let them work with new technologies on the side. One of the brilliant things that Google does is they give you like a 20% of your time is supposed to be spent on research. I mean, that is an absolutely brilliant move, and it's paid off for Google. Something simple as simple as saying, you can go to 2 conferences a year and we'll pay everything. I mean, I know engineers who will put up with miserable work environments if they know they can pick any 2 conferences or training seminars, whatever they want for the year, and go there. You have a $100 a month book budget. You can buy books if you want. That's a big one for me. So it's a shame. I mean, you get athletes, professional athletes. What do? They do these detailed analysis of their mechanics. They work to refine small things. They give them the best equipment they can have. I believe that kind of investment in engineers will give you an outstanding engineering team. Also, organizations often don't have a organizational philosophy. One of the things I really like about the Agile Manifesto and the principles of Agile software is that they reflect a philosophy that helps to govern the work you do outside or in any given situation. You can say, does this apply? Are we really following this or not? How are we reacting to the situation? You don't see that in a lot of organizations. I won't go through the offense and QA other than to say QA this is one of the great flaws of the IT industry as a whole. Quality assurance is seen as second rate. They're paid second rate. They're not treated with respect, and they're usually seen as an obstacle by managers. And this is a reason why we produce so much crappy software. Yes, Jay Brandon.
Yeah, it's like on the last slide. How do you, if you're like working in an organization like a startup with extremely limited resources, how do you effectively invest in your developers?
Well, if it's a startup, the developers are there because they believe in the concept and or the technology, and they're usually willing to make sacrifices in order to do that.
Okay.
In our case, at Pages, we had developers who wanted to do a startup, wanted to work on Next Step, wanted a chance at the geek lottery, and of course the odds are often about that, the same as the real lottery. But if I'm a stable organization, it's got a set of products and so on, I've got the resources to do that sort of thing. Startups have limited resources. That's part of what they do. Trust me, I've been there. I know what that's like. Dealing with the front office. Now this gets back to, if you remember there was a brief reading called Negotiations and Love Songs that talked about suits, yes, geeks, suits, and users, and the fact that they're playing different games. This is probably the single most important slide in this lecture. You need to understand, and I say that not in terms of the class or whatever. When you go out and you're working for a real company, you need to understand that the goals for the business side of the company, which is where the money comes in, and the goals for IT don't align necessarily. And this is where so many conflicts arise because this is not consciously thought out or known. And you get the two sides talking past each other. Basically, the business side says we have to make enough money to meet the payroll. We have to have enough capability to match our competition, and then we need to beat the competition either by going into new fields or having a better or cheaper solution. For IT, it's like we have to keep our staff. We don't want turnover. We want to get off of aging or defective technology, and we want to keep the business side off our back. And part of the problem is because some of the mismatches here, business will see IT as an obstacle. There are actually some books written about this. Is there any real business advantage to IT? Well, part of the problem is that nowadays a lot of the role of IT is simply to stay up with the other competition. And it's often hard to get business to say, no, we need to do this simply to make sure we're still doing what we need to do to stay in business. Because the longer we put off this investment, the more it's going to cost us. It's like, why are we spending $10 million to replace this legacy system? Is it going to make anything better? Are we going to reduce headcount? Which is what business likes to do. And it's like, no, if we don't do this, our system is going to start having increasing failures, and we won't be able to do stuff on, in a sufficiently fast time, and so on. If you remember nothing else from the readings, this slide is what you want. And again, organizations often take a very short-term view. There's a difference between winning a game and having a championship season. Anyway. Oops, sorry, did that. Okay. And we're taking a lot longer than I expected. Oh, go away.